Hello, welcome to another Sonic Lab. We're here with David Ahlund, who is showing us the new AIRA modular digital stuff. If you want to find out about the System 1M part of that, we've shot another video, so do check that out. Today we're going to concentrate on the brand new, the 4 digital modules, the EFX range, right, David?
Correct.
Quite an exciting kind of time for Eurorack, and this is really sort of ramped up the excitement even more.
Yeah.
So what have we got here?
Well, we have our 4 different modular effects. So we have Bitrazer, Scooper, Torcido, Demora. They all have some things in common. They all have 24-bit 96 kilohertz audio interfaces inside, and USB MIDI interface as well.
Right, okay.
Also stereo input, stereo output, and they're all configurable via a software that we have called Customizer.
Which is a really exciting thing that we'll get onto, but there's a lot to see behind. So first things first, obviously the format and the size, what's the kind of HP and those kind of specifications and power, that sort of stuff? Yeah,
they're all 21 HP each, and also power consumption is quite heavy. It's 450 mAh.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
So these have a 9-volt pin in, which again, we were talking about with the System 1M, you're going to be producing a lead which has a box header to 9-volt.
Exactly.
So you don't need to, or you could just have a hole and run the 9-volt power supplies if you wanted to do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So it comes with both the standard 9-volt power supply and also this Eurorack adapter.
It's worth mentioning, obviously, if you've got kind of maybe a low-cost Eurorack enclosure, quite often the power supply is the thing that's not all that beefy.
Yeah.
So you're going to need a sort of 4 to 6 amp if you wanted to run the whole system, right?
Yeah, and together with a bunch of other things, definitely you would need
But the good news is you can run it from the box headers, so it will just integrate. You don't need to cannibalize your case, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what does the Bitrazer do for us then?
Yeah, so the Bitrazer is essentially a bit crusher and a cutoff filter in one box.
So it's a a low pass filter?
Yeah, it's both actually. It's combined. So you can switch here. You have LPF, HPF there.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very smooth, like all of these, because you have 16 million steps. So it's 24-bit. So it's very, very high resolution in the knobs and in the parameter changes. So if I play a little bass line here, we can have a listen to the low pass filter here. It's very nice and smooth. Change it to high pass filter. And of course we can add some more resonance. And it's even self-oscillating, of course, if you wish.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any stepping going on there actually to my ears. So I mean, I'm noticing that we've got like an input jack here, and input. So these can be all CV control of these parameters.
Exactly.
As well.
You can send CV to them, and also you can reroute them and have them do different things in our software that I'll show you later.
So let's get to the bit crusher part of it.
Yeah.
And that just presumably downsamples and messes it up.
Absolutely. So and it's routed before the cutoff filter. So if we turn it on here, it's just a sample rate degrading, nice and crunchy, and then you also have bit degrading here.
So you can get it to bind. Does it do binary? Right. Okay. Yeah, almost. Yeah. Okay. So, and then we've got things like sort of volume of the, is that what input or out?
That's the input volume.
Okay, so you've got control over those sort of things. And all of these things are modulatable, as we say. So we get quite a lot of control over this.
Yeah, and you have 2 inputs and 2 outputs. So normally you would use that for stereo in and stereo out, of course. But you can also reroute it. So if you want, for instance, input 2 to be a clock input, and you want to send that clock somewhere else and so on, you can do that as well.
And could you, we're getting into configurator kind of mode, but is it possible to maybe have left channel bit crusher, right channel filter, that sort of thing, so you can split it up into sort of individual channels that way as well?
Yes, you can do that.
Oh, right, okay.
Because when you bring it up in the software, you will see the default routing, and you can reroute it.
Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So perhaps the next thing to look at is the scooper, and this is more, if I'm right, this is more like the kind of scatter effects type of thing, right?
Actually, the name scooper comes from a combination of scatter and looper. So,
right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pun. And we also got a sync trig input here.
Right, this
so,
guy here.
Yeah, so this will help you obviously to make your loops very perfect when it comes to start
Right, so
and
you
end.
can have it clocking from an LFO or whatever, or a sequence or anything in it. Right, I got you.
Yeah, so basically all you do is you send a clock in there, which I'm doing now from the SBX1. So if I start the baseline here, you can see the sync trigger blinking there. It's because it's receiving that clock there. So it will automatically quantize my button presses when I start and stop. 2, 3, 4. So now you have a perfect loop there.
We're just listening, so now we're just listening to what we recorded, not the pattern that's playing. But
exactly.
It's effectively the same thing, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So this is the loop, and now we can mess around with this loop by just pressing the scatter button here, and it will start activate the effect. So we have the scatter type. So this is basically different kind of effect patterns, and we have the depth of the effect here.
Right, okay.
So
let's go. So that effectively, that's granularizing the sample and chopping it up in real time again.
Absolutely. And additionally, you also have a dual cutoff filter here. So basically, it's a high pass filter on this in this direction, and also a low pass filter in this direction, and a pitch shifter as well.
So this is recorded. This is playing a 1 bar loop.
Yeah.
What's the maximum amount of time that the scooper can record?
You can record up to 10 seconds with it.
And now this is obviously triggering from our sequence, which is running from the TR8. So can we then bring things back in underneath it?
Of course. So
Right,
now,
so-
yeah, we have the nice synchronization here, and you can also drop the loop out and bring in the direct sound. So if I just press here, basically like a bypass button.
So now we're listening to the System 1 coming through,
Yeah,
because these are all chained together, right?
yeah, and then just bring back the recording like this.
Right, so you
Again-
could you could record a loop, then have something playing alongside it and drop it in and out.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
And it will retrig again according to the clock. So
That's neat.
yeah,
So all of this control can happen. Now these are all, once again, this is all CV controllable.
yeah, exactly. So you can control all of these controllers with CV and gates and so on. And
Right, so it gives us quite a lot. I mean, I guess one of the, if we just stop that a sec.
yeah.
Have I got that right? I think I've got it right. So one of the things that was asked, because when I knew you were coming down, I put some questions out on Facebook, and one of the questions that came up was, what is it like for audio rate? Because traditionally digital modules are not all that responsive in terms of audio rate modulation. So it'd be really good to hear that. I know I've got an oscillator down here which we can plug in and then dial up and have a listen. Is that all right if we do that?
Absolutely. Let's control, for instance, the cutoff filter with that, and I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
Right, so I've got an external input that's coming from a Pittsburgh modular oscillator. Where does that go? Into this one?
Yes, right next to the group for 2 there.
Right, we can see that the audio that we're in sort of LFO rates here.
Yes.
So now if I bring this right up, going right up high to a crazy high,
Yeah.
and that's full depth. And back down
So-
again.
So you can see it responds really well, really instantly.
Yes, I've just had to get up from the floor because we didn't have enough room for everything here. Okay, right, so now we've cleared that question up. You wanted to show us an example to do with noise as well, because it's not just about...
Yeah, exactly, because just to sort of prove the scooper principle more clearly, I'd like to show just how you can really make any random noise basically sound cool with a scooper. So
Okay.
if we go from here again, and we just do this, this will overtake the MIDI, so... And I record something like that.
Right.
And now we start with the effects. 2, 3, 4.
Kind of really brings the scatter effect to life, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, even if you start with just a noise, you can still have it do really cool stuff. So all you need is a clock and some type of sound,
Some
basically.
kind of input.
Yeah.
Right, well, on to the next one, which is the Torcido,
Yes.
right? What does this one do?
So this is basically a distortion effect. So we have the standard things here, distortion level and the tone character. Also, we have this tube warmth knob, which makes it kind of sound like more present, more warm, and more vintage.
So let's have a listen.
All right. So now it's fully wet. So we have the balance there. And what I like to do with the distortion is to just use a little bit of the Bitrazer, maybe turn up the resonance a little bit,
Right.
make it more kind of whiny and crunchy, like that. And now we can start playing with this.
So it's got some really extreme aspects to it as well.
Yeah, and even a low boost, which makes it even more nasty. And we also have the tube warmth knob here, which adds this kind of vintage character to it, which I really think works very well. So now when we turn up this to the max, there's something just more present there.
Right.
Some low boost.
And again, all of these parameters you can modulate. It's interesting because we were talking about, we've been talking about, the idea of rack mounting guitar pedals and giving them CV inputs, and this is sort of getting close to that, certainly in terms of overdrive and distortion. Right?
Very close, I would say, absolutely.
So as we're moving along these, it's very clear that these are exactly the same layout on each one. I mean, I know that it's possible to send other configurations into them when we get onto that with the editor. Are they actually physically different? So could a Torcido become a Scooper or a Scooper become a Torcido depending on what you send it?
No, not exactly, but because the customizer software always has the main module as the sort of foundation of the patch, but that's all, and that's fixed, but that's all that is fixed. So you can essentially, if you want to, you can actually bypass the whole main module and just use a noise generator or
well,
like
before
that.
we get onto that, we've also got the Demora, which is something that I'm quite interested in because I like the idea of CV controlled delays and effects because I know I'm missing that in my setup. So show me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Demora is in a way a basic delay, but also you can get to kind of extreme values again, especially with the feedback and the time. The time goes actually all the way down to 20 microseconds.
Right, so we can get a real pingy kind of whining.
And with a high feedback, that gives you some really drastic effects.
So can we have a listen?
Yeah, absolutely. So now it's dry. Add some wetness here.
So this is running on its own. We haven't got any clocking, or I presume you can clock the delay times. We're just listening to freeform at the moment.
Absolutely, you can clock it, but not right now. It's just free. So here's some interesting things that might happen. So let's check this out. If we turn up the level a little bit, put the feedback to the max, and now increasingly turn the time to be lower and lower.
Whoa, it feels like something really bad's about to happen when it gets to that. It's like there's this moment of, but
I always kind of expect it to explode every time, but it hasn't so far.
So in terms of delays, what are the parameters we've got? We've got the
well, we got wet, dry, of course, time, feedback, the standard things, but we also have this width knob here. Obviously you need to use the stereo output for that, but this will essentially create a type of panning delay.
A sort of panning delay.
Yeah,
right,
but
okay.
it will change the pattern of the panning depending on how.
So we can get ping pongs and kind of more interesting stuff. And what's the maximum delay time we can get in here? Because they're obviously it's digital, so we'd hope for a lot.
Yeah, so it goes actually all the way up to 20 seconds. So 20 microseconds to 20 seconds. So that's a huge span for a delay.
Right, okay. Yeah. And again, we can configure all of these CV inputs and outputs and everything to kind of work in a way that we want.
Absolutely. For instance, you can route input to receive a clock, for instance, if you want to do something like that. And then it will synchronize to
and this is where it comes into, again, before we get to the editor, when you're making patches in the editor and configuring them, you kind of squirt the sound into them via a piece of audio. And so have you got a patch that you could run into this that would be something different that we can just listen to?
Absolutely, I do actually. I brought my little phone here, so I can just connect a cable to the phone, send that audio file out, and the Bitrazer will turn into a noise generator, for instance. And that will only take 2 seconds through the remote inputs.
And you don't have to go into a special mode. I think we better see it in action quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just take a little patch cable here.
So you've just got some audio samples in your phone, right?
Yeah, this is just a normal wave files that I'm gonna play back. So just to remind us again, this is what the Bitrazer does, sample rate, but here, bit down, right? This is the bit down rate. So if I just put in my patch here, connect this to the remote input,
Right.
and let me just bring my playlist.
Maybe if you bring your phone up here so we can see it happening, because it's got, well,
Absolutely.
don't want to see your password, obviously, but, or any saucy text messages you might have on your phone.
So, here we go. So I have my EFX here.
Right.
So I'll take EFX Bitrazer noise. I
Right.
named that one. So that's on that little playlist. So now when I play this and you watch this indicator here, it will start blinking for just a couple of seconds. That means it's receiving a new patch. Like that.
Right.
And there you go.
So
you got it
now-
already.
So now that's just a noise generator.
Yeah, and this is just controlling the level of the white noise.
So that's one of the ancillary modules that we can configure in the editor, right?
Yes, absolutely.
This seems like a really good time to take a look at that editor, right?
I think we should. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're running this on the laptop at the moment,
Yes.
and but it does run under OS X.
PC, OS X, Windows, iOS, and Android.
Right, okay.
Pretty much all platforms.
So this represents the core module that we've got here.
Yeah.
And what's going on with the below parts? Is that all the ins and outs we've got?
Yeah, so these are the input 1 and 2 is obviously the audio inputs, and same with the outputs here.
So those are the green ones, right?
Yeah, and you can route them as you wish. And these red ones are the different controllers on board, the physical controller.
Ah, so they can be cross-patched as well.
Yeah,
Crikey.
you can have them do several things at the same time. So
this represents the default configuration, does it, where
Yeah.
the inputs are attached to the particular knob functions?
Absolutely.
So presumably we can now add how many extra modules, control modules?
Yeah,
can
so
add?
we have 6 slots here.
Right.
And all I do is just click an empty slot, and I will get a selection of the current modules I have to choose from. We have coming soon there, so there will be more modules in the future. But these are the 15 ones we have to work with right now. So there are different types of audio processing, basically. And for instance, we have an LFO here. I can easily just add that, and it shows up there.
Yeah.
You can move it around as well. I can put it down here if I want,
Right,
like
okay,
that,
so you can
yeah.
set it up how you wish.
Yeah.
So how would we incorporate that LFO now into a patch?
Yeah, well, for instance, since the LFO actually has a sync trig input, what we can do is, for instance, remove input 2 here on the module and actually patch it to the sync in input instead.
So that'd be like re-triggering the waveform, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now the LFO will be restarted by a sync trig in signal coming from input 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And presumably then the control output we can then feed into like the filter mod or whatever. Yeah?
Absolutely. So let's send the CV out here to the filter control input here.
Right, which is currently also handled. So that sums it, because at the moment the big knob on the front is what's controlling that. But
yeah, that is,
and the additional modulation.
Yeah,
source,
exactly.
Right, okay.
So now the LFO is being synced through the input 2, and we can also still control the filter with the filter.
It's worth mentioning as well, because I didn't realise this. I thought you had to kind of write the patch and then send it in. This is working in real time, so when we add something and we change a parameter, the audio is coming down the cable from the laptop output and going straight into the module.
Absolutely. So every time I make a little adjustment here on the patch, so if I do this and then I release it, it will send the audio signal from the output jack into the module. So the module will stay updated whatever I do here in real time.
But there's also a USB connection which would be even more real time, so you'd be actually moving the knobs in real time rather than when you release the parameter.
Exactly. Okay. And also, in the USB version, you can actually get the current patch from the module.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it will. Obviously, you can't do that with audio output. So
that's very interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, so now if we play that, so I don't know if I trigger a sound on here.
Yeah.
Is that the LFO now actually triggering that?
Yeah. If I run my sequencer here, now this is actually synchronized to the clock. So if we have the kick here.
So the LFO, so if we change the rate of the LFO.
Yeah. Obviously the rate still changes, but actually it will restart to sync.
Right, so we can go, So we've actually added an LFO in there that is clocked from an external source, and this is all happening under the hood. This is kind of quite so presumably we can build up some really complex patches.
Yeah, I mean,
you had some noise in an earlier one. Can we see how that works?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just go here, choose the noise oscillator there.
So this is a dual send, isn't it? By the looks of it.
Exactly. So you have two noises, and you can morph between white and pink noise as well here on each one. And they both have their own inputs and outputs. Now we want that noise oscillator, but we also want it to be controllable with knob number 3, for instance. So what I'll do here is I'll send the noise output into an amp's input.
Yep.
Then I'll send that amp's output into the input of the main module. So now we will be hearing some noise.
Right.
We get the noise coming in through the LFO and everything.
Yeah.
And we also want to control the noise level. So what I will do is I'll send knob number 3 to the actual amp level. So I'll just put this over here, like that.
So now
you can control the white noise level with that knob.
Right, so if you play the sequence, I'm just really curious to hear how that sounds now. So
yeah.
But I mean, the illustrative point is there. If we stop that we've just added a noise source that is also going through the filter, and we can also, what I'm interested in is the way that we can merge signals into jacks.
Yeah.
So right, so that I mean, the possibilities are starting to get quite enormous. So I'm guessing also, if we're thinking of this in terms of audios being sent in, if you had a multi-output audio interface and you were playing live, you could effectively send patch changes and complete module configurations in real time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Into your system. Wow,
just audio clips.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I suppose if you were using patch recalls via MIDI, via the USB, you could have the same deal as well. So, okay, right, rewind a minute. What modules have we actually got in there? Because that's something that I didn't see all of those.
Yeah, so we have 15 as it is now. So we have some basic things: LFO, ADSR or envelope, a noise generator, sample and hold, ring modulation, 2 types of filters, 6 dB and 12 dB. Tone, which is basically tone character, so you can make it more dark, make it more bright. The amp that we were just using as well. Mixer, so 4-channel mixer. Stereo mixer, curve converter, gate divider. This is trig to delay time CV. That is a specific model to convert a trig signal to the delay time of the Demora. And also we can convert MIDI clock to gate.
Right, so that enables us to take a MIDI signal from, I guess, is that over USB from the back, and then turn that into, and so that gives us another level of, so it's there's quite a complex amount of routing and possibilities. I guess from an outsider point of view, I guess the only downside could be you switch the thing on, you're not entirely sure what the configuration of the module is.
I've done it several times already.
So I noticed you had the audio things on your phone, which is like vanilla, 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 and you can just start from scratch.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if you're using the customizer through USB, then you can get the patch from the module as well.
Right, so that gives you...
So you can recall it and see what was going on actually when...
And the editor and all these modules, they're free. You know, when you buy these, then that's what comes with it,
yes,
right? So,
yes, they're included.
So... what sort of particular favourite configurations are you finding there? Because you're probably the only person who's using it as much as anybody in the world. What are you finding? What
I really like personally is to tweak around with the Bitrazer and record it into the scooper with basically anything from, like I showed you already, a noise to a bass line or even vocals. I think it's really cool to kind of chop it up and make it kind of speak and spell-ish.
Oh, right. Can you show us that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sonic stage, Sonic stage, Sonic stage,
No, that's of course, I think that's brilliant. That's fantastic. So, I mean, all of these, they're all coming out at the same time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And pricing and availability, do you know that off the top of your head?
Recommended retail price will be £245.
Right.
Yeah.
And when are they coming?
June, July.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they're going to do real, because I mean, the thing that just seeing about that, even when you take the core functionality into it, if you
Yeah.
just got rid of that and did the programmability
exactly.
side, there's all of that stuff, which is really, that's quite fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, like you said, even as the main modules they are, you can do really, really interesting stuff. And then adding the customizer on top, you can...
And of course, we're running these in series, aren't they? So one's going to the other. Whereas, you know, if you had a mixer involved, you could have them all running separately and do all sorts of crazy stuff with them.
What I've done now is output, input, and so on in mono, and then just convert the mono input here into stereo because I want to use the width of the delay there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you very much for showing us, and we should give you your moment of playing out with the whole rack and setup. So, thank you very much for showing us.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Take care.
You too.